This video demonstrates how to use relative and absolute cell references in Excel functions. So I'm going to create a couple of functions here, and you can see I have sort of a basic set of data here. All I've put in is I've taken somebody for as an example who wants to track their weight, and it's January and they're doing a New Year's resolution to lose some weight. So I've inputted their starting weight here. I have the weeks here, and I stopped at 10 just because you can get an idea without me typing it all the way up to 52. And then I have put some weights in for the first 10 weeks. And I'm going to change the formatting of that so it looks better. And then what I'm going to do in here is add a formula to track how much they're losing per week. So at a glance, they can say, hey, last week I lost a half a pound or whatever it may be. And then also, how much have I lost up year to date? Basically, this is my year to date formula right here, or function rather. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a function, and as I do these, I'm going to show you how they're relative and how they're absolute. So to start a function, if you've never done one, is to press the equal sign on your keyboard. Once you do that, that automatically inputs both in the box you're working in and the function bar up at the top of Excel. So you'll notice it's in both places. Then I'm going to say for this one to do weight loss week to week. It doesn't really make sense to put in the first week. So actually I'm going to click in this next box and I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to say this cell here minus the week before. Okay, so that shows I'm down half a pound. I'm negative 1/2 pound at this point on week 2. So these cells here are relative. So I'm saying C7 and minus B7, and you'll see how the relative works out. So I'm going to, sorry, if you have never seen this before, this little small green box in the corner, if you hover over that till you get the black plus, you can drag either across multiple columns or multiple rows, but you can't do both. So see, I'm actually way down here at a diagonal, but it'll only let me do one of those. You could copy all the way out to the columns and then also do rows if you wanted to, like if you had a reason for that, but you just can't do, you cannot copy rows and columns at the same time for functions. It does not work that way. So once I copy, you can see. So the first one was C7 minus B7. The next one became D7 minus C7. That's how they are relative. As I copy a function, the cells that are in the function change relative to where you started. So if I were to go backwards, you can actually go backwards with a function. Same thing, you grab that yellow box and you go backwards, except for there's nothing to subtract in this one. That's why it's coming up with a value. It doesn't know what to do with it. But you could copy that direction if you wanted to. Same thing with, you can copy up, which is also sort of backwards. So same thing, there's nothing to actually process there. But you can do that with a formula. So say you start in the wrong spot or you add a column in later, you absolutely can copy a function back that direction. So don't think that you can't. So the relative piece of this is that when I copy a function, the function itself changes relative to where you started. So I could move this function over here and I can actually copy it out, and I'm going to get the same results as up here. So here's the 0.7, 0.5, 0, because it's, again, relative. It's relative to what you're copying. It will just enumerate either the column or the row depending on if you're expanding out columns or rows. So that's exactly what a relative cell function means, or a relative cell reference. Also, so here, let me show you the backwards here. Boop, just like that. So this one says E7 minus D7, and this one's going to say D minus C, C minus B. So that's how you can do that. So another way that you can create cell references is absolute, which means I want exactly the cell that I have selected. Don't add to it. So I'm going to say here, in this one I'm saying, what's my year lost to date? So for this one, I can start in the first cell. I'm going to say, take that first week and subtract my starting weight, which is 0. Now, if I copy this function out, like I did the first one, it's not going to be correct because you'll see that it's doing relative and it's subtracting a 0. So it's saying that basically I weigh nothing. So that's not right. So the way that we change that is to make this here, the piece that's being subtracted, your starting weight, a absolute cell reference. To do that, I put a $sign in front of the column and a $sign in front of the row. That is critical. It has to be both. Now, if you happen to have some sort of number that is that maybe is moving between columns or rows, which is even more complicated. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would use that. Then you would only do one. But to do an absolute cell reference for a cell, you would do both the column and the row. If it was only one or the other, you would put the $ in front of the one that you needed to be absolute. So I'm going to hit enter. And now I'm going to copy this function and I'm going to show you what happens. There's the difference. So if I go here, now instead of being B7 minus my starting weight, it is C7 minus my starting weight, and then D7, and then E7, all minusing my starting weight, which is way up here in B4. And how did that work? Because the first number, the first function, I did not put $ in front of, so those are relative, meaning as I move them along the columns, they're going to be created relative to where I started from. Obviously in this one, it's the column before, so it enumerates one so that it's working with the current data in the column it's in. However, what's being subtracted, which is my starting weight, is still going to be B4 because I have said I want only this cell. I don't have a new starting weight at the end of last year every week. It's the same. And why type out, why copy 155 all the way along here when you don't have to? You could just reference this one cell. So it saves you a little bit of time if you know how to use an absolute cell reference when you have specific situations like this. So there are definitely needs for both relative and absolute cell references, and the beauty of Excel is that you can use a combination of relative and absolute in a single function. I've done it right here. There will be other times when you'll have a function that's only relative, like here, and there could also be times here. There could also be times when you have a cell or a function that's only absolute cell references. That could happen as well. So you can create a function with relative cell references, absolute cell references, or both, depending upon what kind of data you're trying to collect. And the beauty of functions, obviously, is once you create one, you can copy it, and then from there, you don't have to sit and type it out. Now, these are pretty simple functions, just a subtraction. Very simple, very easy, but you can get more and more complex functions that are counting blanks or counting specific numbers or characters and all kinds of other things, and subtracting and adding and averages. And the more complex they are, the greater the value of being able to copy a function with either the relative or absolute cell references to get the right function for the columns that you have, or rows. In this example, I'm doing them in columns. And that's pretty much how you use relative and absolute cell references in Excel functions.